So we're going to go through the starting engines checklist next. The starting engines checklist should be memorized. All the items should be done in quick succession, which is why it needs to be memorized. But before I get into that, I'm just going to give you a basic overview of the engine instruments and what you're going to be expecting during the start to happen. So we're going to be starting the right engine first, so we'll be looking at the right hand gauges here. Starting at the top, we've got the Interstage turbine temperature gauge, ITT as we call it. Pretty much you're going to be watching this to make sure that the temperature in the engine does not exceed its maximum value. You're just going to make sure that during the start that this needle comes up, and it'll come up kind of quick at first, but then it'll start to come back down and level off somewhere in here. If you notice that it starts to come up really quickly and goes up past the red line, then you know you have a hot start. Hot starts when the engine's got way too much fuel too quickly, and it could damage the engine if you allow it to continue. So you're going to have to cut off the fuel and turn off the igniter if that happens. So you're going to be watching the ITT. Make sure that during the start, once you've introduced fuel, that this needle kind of comes up smoothly and then levels off somewhere down here in the green. The torque you're also going to be looking at during the start, but it's not as big of a deal. You'll watch that the torque comes up. The torque gauge is essentially just showing how much work you're putting on the engine. It's in foot-pounds, so it's really related to what the propeller setting is. As you increase the blade angle through the air or decrease the RPM, the torque will go up because you're putting more of a load on the engine with this propeller biting more into the air. So that's pretty much what the torque gauge is. During the start, you'll see it come up and then go back and level off somewhere down lower. Don't really need to worry about it too much. Propeller gauge, you don't really need to watch during the start at all. It's just the same as any constant speed prop airplane that you've flown before. Pretty much just shows what you've set the propeller RPM to. In the Metro Sims, one of the propeller gauges actually kind of spins around the wrong way for some reason during the start. Don't worry about that. They should just kind of come up and then level off. Doesn't even matter if it's one of these red areas on there, as long as you're at low power settings. This one will come spinning around this way and level off somewhere down there. Next is the N1 gauge, so the gas generator RPM. You'll be watching this quite closely during the start. So the magic number here is 12%. You're going to be looking for 12% right after you've switched the starter switch on. The starter switch is going to run up and get some air flowing through the engine, as well as getting the RPMs up. So you're going to watch for this to come up to about 12%. We don't have these fancy little digital gauges in ours, but you'll see the needle run up to about 12, and that's when you'll introduce gas into the system with the condition lever. And another thing to note is 50%. Once you're at about 50% N1, you're going to be turning off the igniter switch. So I'll show you the igniter switch during the start sequence, but 12% is what you're going to wait for it to get up to before you actually put any gas in the system with the condition lever, and then 50% is what you're going to be waiting for to turn the igniter switch off. Fuel flow is another thing you're going to be watching for. You're going to make sure that the fuel starts flowing in the engine when you introduce it with the condition lever, and obviously the oil temperature on the left and the oil pressure. Make sure those go up into the green arcs. So here we go with the start sequence. Remember, we're going to be watching the N1 gauges go up to about 12. Then I'll introduce some fuel with the condition lever over here. Then we'll watch the ITT rise, the torque will come up, the prop will come up, and the N1 will also come up. In the simulators at Metro, the N1 comes up quite a bit slower than it does here. It usually takes maybe 15 seconds to get up to 50% N1, at which point you will turn the igniter back off. We're also going to be watching the fuel flow and the oil pressure and temperature. We're going to be watching the fuel pressure low annunciator up here should go away, along with the oil pressure low annunciator should both go away. Those are on the checklist. The First officer will call those out, so you're going to say, the captain will say, starting right engine, start time. We'll say start time as soon as we switch this. First officer will say timing. We'll watch the ignition annunciator should turn on. And then once we get 13% N1, we're going to move this up into low idle, introduce the fuel to the system. First officer should say fuel pressure is out, and then oil pressure out, and then ignition should be switched off past 50% on here, or past 20 seconds of the timing that the first officer did, whichever comes first. Then you're going to be checking all the engine instruments to be in their normal green arcs, and then you're going to set the condition lever up into high idle so that we can achieve 72% N1. We want 72% N1 because that's what we're going to be able to hold the generator load at once we switch the right generator on with that engine started. So we're going to switch the generator on after we get 72% N1, and we may have to add a little bit of throttle over here to bring that N1 up to 72%. And then we'll be looking up at the top panel to make sure that the generator load is somewhere in this arc. It's between 0 and 100% load, and at first that generator load will be up at 100, and it should be about 2 minutes that it takes for the generator load to go down below 50% so that you can start the left engine. In the simulator, it does actually go down below 50, but it takes about 2 or 3 minutes, and we don't really care that much since it's a simulator, so we don't really look at that, but it is something that you need to know about for exams and such. So here we go with the start sequence. Down on the lower left, I'm going to press the right starter switch. So as captain, I'll say start time. We see the fuel pressure low annunciator has gone out. The N1 has started to rise, and it's gone up and leveled off around 11 to 12%. So we'll come back here over to the right condition lever, add some gas. The right oil pressure low annunciator has gone out, and we can look and see that the ITT has gone up, the torque went up momentarily, the prop went up, and the N1 has gone up. N1 should come up around 65%. It's past 50. In our sims, again, it takes maybe 15 seconds for it to come up to 50%, and it's probably been about 20 seconds, so once it's past 50 and 20 seconds, I'm going to turn the starter switch off on that engine, and it's all set. The fuel flow is good, and the oil pressure and temperature is up in the green arcs. So that's just starting up the right engine. Again, the call outs for that are start time, first officer says timing, and they are waiting for 20 seconds to go by before they'll say okay, timer's up. In between that 20 seconds, they'll say, the first officer will say fuel pressure, oil pressure, fuel flow. They're just pretty much stating that these things are going in the sequence that they're supposed to, and that the engines are starting up correctly. Next, we're going to be moving over to the left engine, but in order to get that started, we are going to have to get the generator on for the right engine that we just started. In order to get the generator on, we need to have enough load, electrical load from this right engine to keep that right generator happy running on its own. So to do that, we're going to have to get 72% N1. Currently it's at about 66%. So I'm going to move this condition lever on the right up to high idle. When it's in high idle, it should come up to about 70% in our sims. I think it might even come up to 72% in our sims. If it doesn't get up to 72% all the way, you'll just add a little bit of throttle with the power lever, and that should bring it up to around 72%. So with that 72%, we can start the right generator. After starting the right generator, we're going to be looking up to the electrical loads. As you can see, it is up near 100%. This generator's got a lot of the load on it. After about 2 or 3 minutes, it should go down back below 50%, and that is the limitation for when you're going to be able to use the left starter. So we'll go back down here, and as long as we're above 72% and everything, and 50% on the generator up there, we can start the left engine. So left engine start exactly the same as the right engine. So we're going to be saying the same call outs again. We'll say start time. We've got the left engine starter is going. We look up at these lights, the fuel pressure has gone out, and our N1 is leveling off around 12%. Once we're at 12% around there, we're going to introduce some fuel with this condition lever. Now that that's happened, the oil pressure annunciator has gone out, and we can look down at the N1. It's definitely gone way up past 50%, and we're about 20 seconds, so I'm going to turn this igniter off. The ITT rose and went back and stabilized. The torque rose, went back. Same with the prop and the fuel flow. Oil temperature and pressure are all in the green. And we see we have our N1 down here is 66, and the other one is in high idle at 72. We can go ahead and turn on the left generator now. Since we've got both engines running and the other generator is holding most of the loads, it's fine. We don't need to bring this left engine up into high idle at all. So we're just going to move over here and turn that left generator on. Now that we've got the left generator on, we can go ahead and look up here. We see that both generators are sharing the load pretty much in parallel, which is what we like to see. And then we'll come back and put our right engine back to low idle with the left engine. We can also bring back the power from the right engine from earlier that I had moved up into the 72%, and low idle on both with both the power levers in about the same spot. We get around the same N1 on each. So now that we've done that, that's essentially the entirety of the starting engines checklist. You can see it kind of goes quickly, and you need to have those items all memorized so that it all works out.